In the depths of the night, when darkness covers the earth and humanity sleeps peacefully in their beds, there exists a world invisible to our eyes, but very real to those who dwell within it. A world where creatures made of smokeless fire walk among us, where spiritual battles rage unseen, and where ancient enemies plot against the children of Adam. But there was a time long ago when these two worlds were not separated by the thick veil that now conceals the unseen realm. There was an era in human history when men and women could look upon the Jinn with their naked eyes, speak with them face to face, and witness their true forms without fear or confusion. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your country in the comments below and subscribe to this channel if you love learning about the mysteries of Islam that most people never hear about. Tonight, we journey back to that extraordinary time when the barriers between dimensions were thin, when humans and Jinn lived side by side in the same physical space, and when the spiritual realm was as visible as the material world around us. This is not a story from mythology or fantasy, but a reality documented in the Qur'an, authenticated by the Hadith, and witnessed by generations of our righteous predecessors. We will uncover the secrets of this ancient era, discover why Allah eventually separated these worlds, and learn about the profound implications this has for our lives today. The story begins in the earliest days of creation, when Allah the Almighty first breathed life into Adam, peace be upon him, and placed him in the Garden of Paradise. Even before humanity was sent to earth, the Jinn had already been created thousands of years earlier, dwelling in this world and building civilizations that we can barely imagine. These beings of smokeless fire possessed intelligence, free will, and the ability to choose between good and evil, just like humans. But unlike us, they could see both the physical and spiritual dimensions simultaneously, moving freely between the seen and unseen realms with ease. When Adam, peace be upon him, and Hawa were sent down to earth after their time in paradise, they entered a world already inhabited by these ancient beings. The early generations of humanity possessed a spiritual clarity and purity that we have long since lost. Their hearts were clean from the accumulated sins and spiritual pollutions that would later cloud human perception. Their souls were still close to their original state of fitra, that primordial nature upon which Allah created all human beings. This spiritual purity allowed them to perceive realities that are now hidden from us, to see beyond the material world into the realm of spirits and souls. The authentic Islamic sources tell us that the early people could see the Jinn as clearly as they could see each other. They witnessed their true forms, massive creatures of fire and wind, some beautiful beyond description, others terrifying in their ugliness and malevolence. The believing Jinn appeared as beings of pure light, their faces radiant with the glow of faith, their movements graceful and peaceful. But the disbelieving Jinn, the shayateen among them, appeared in their true hideous forms, dark and twisted, with eyes like burning coals and voices like the grinding of metal against stone. This was a time when the spiritual battle between good and evil was fought in the open, visible to all who had eyes to see. In those ancient days, humans and Jinn would gather in the same places, trade in the same markets, and sometimes even form alliances with one another. The righteous among both species would join together in worship of Allah, while the corrupt among them would conspire in rebellion against their creator. The Jinn possessed knowledge and abilities that humans lacked, while humans possessed certain qualities and perspectives that the Jinn found valuable. They would share information about the unseen world, teach each other about different realms of existence, and learn from one another's clear throat experiences and wisdom. This interaction was not always peaceful, however, as conflicts would arise between the two species, leading to wars and struggles that shaped the course of ancient history. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, informed us through authentic hadith that the Jinn had prophets sent to them just as humans did. These prophets would preach to mixed congregations of humans and Jinn, delivering the message of monotheism to both species simultaneously. The Quran tells us about the time when a group of Jinn came to listen to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, reciting the Quran, and they went back to their people as warners spreading the message of Islam among their kind. But in the early days of human history, this kind of interaction was much more common and visible to the human eye. Imagine standing in a gathering where you could see beings of light and fire sitting alongside humans, all listening to the same message of divine guidance, all struggling with the same choice between faith and disbelief. The scholars of Islamic history tell us about the great kings and rulers of the past who commanded both human and jinn armies. The most famous of these was Prophet Sulaiman, peace be upon him, who was granted by Allah the ability to command the jinn and make them work under his authority. But Sulaiman's case was special, a unique miracle granted to him alone among all of creation. Before his time, however, the interaction between humans and jinn was more natural and commonplace, though not involving the same level of control and command that Allah granted to Sulaiman. These ancient rulers would have jinn advisors in their courts, would consult with them on matters of governance and warfare, and would sometimes send jinn messengers to distant lands because of their ability to travel vast distances in short periods of time. But why were humans able to see the jinn so clearly in those days? And why has this ability been lost to us spiritually? The answer lies in understanding the spiritual evolution of humanity and the wisdom of Allah, in how He manages the relationship between the seen and unseen worlds. As generations passed and humanity moved further away from the time of Adam, peace be upon him, the spiritual purity that characterized the early people began to diminish. Sins accumulated in human hearts, causing a gradual clouding of spiritual vision. The more humanity engaged in disobedience to Allah, the thicker the veil became between them and the unseen realm. The early Islamic scholars explained that this gradual separation was actually a mercy from Allah, protecting humanity from spiritual harm. When humans could see the jinn clearly, they were also more susceptible to their influence and manipulation. The disbelieving jinn would use their visible presence to mislead humans, to convince them to worship them instead of Allah, and to lead them astray from the straight path. By gradually veiling the jinn from human sight, Allah protected the majority of humanity from falling into shirk and spiritual corruption. Now only those with exceptional spiritual purity, or those whom Allah specially blesses, can perceive the jinn directly. And even then, such experiences are rare and usually serve specific divine purposes. The transition from the age of visible jinn to our current era did not happen overnight. Historical accounts describe a gradual process that took place over many centuries. First, the ability to see jinn clearly became limited to certain individuals, those who were exceptionally pious or who had been granted special spiritual gifts. Then, even these individuals could only see jinn under specific circumstances, during particular times of day, or in certain locations where the veil between worlds was thinner. Eventually, the sight of jinn became so rare that when it did occur, it was considered a miraculous event, something worth recording and remembering for generations. The authentic sources tell us about the last known widespread interaction between humans and jinn occurring during the time just before and during the prophetic mission of Muhammad, peace be upon him. The jinn would regularly ascend to the lower heavens to eavesdrop on the conversations of angels and bring back news of the unseen to fortune tellers and soothsayers on earth. But when the final prophet, peace be upon him, was sent, Allah strengthened the guards of the heavens, and the jinn found themselves pelted with shooting stars whenever they tried to listen to the divine communications. This event marked the final severing of many connections between the human and jinn worlds, as one of their primary methods of interaction, through the sharing of hidden knowledge, was cut off. The Quran records the conversation of the jinn when they realized that something momentous had happened in the heavens, leading them to search for and find the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, reciting the Quran. But what was life really like during those extraordinary times when humans and jinn coexisted visibly? The historical accounts paint a picture of a world far more complex and mysterious than we can imagine today. In the ancient marketplaces, jinn merchants would sell goods that existed partially in the spiritual realm. These items could provide protection against evil spirits or enhance human perception of the unseen world. Human craftsmen would work alongside jinn artisans, learning techniques that involved manipulating both physical materials and spiritual energies. The resulting artifacts were said to possess properties that purely human-made items could never achieve. Objects that could ward off evil, heal diseases, or provide insight into hidden truths. The architecture of ancient cities reflected this dual existence, with buildings designed to accommodate both human and jinn inhabitants. Certain areas of cities were designated as neutral zones, where both species could gather safely. In contrast, other areas were restricted to one group or the other based on their spiritual nature and requirements. The grand mosques and temples of those times were constructed with knowledge of how to harmonize the physical and spiritual dimensions, creating spaces where worship could be conducted by both humans and believing jinns simultaneously. These buildings incorporated geometric patterns and acoustic designs that resonated with both material and ethereal forms of existence, allowing prayers and supplications to be elevated to Allah through multiple dimensions of reality. The educational systems of ancient civilizations included instruction in both human and jinn knowledge. Students would learn not only about the physical sciences and arts that humans had developed, but also about the spiritual sciences that the jinn had mastered over their millennia of existence. This included knowledge of different dimensions, the ability to travel through spiritual realms, methods of protection against evil entities, and techniques for purifying the soul to achieve higher states of consciousness. The greatest scholars of those times were those who had mastered knowledge from both worlds, who could understand the interconnections between the physical and spiritual aspects of existence, and who could guide their students in navigating the complex realities of a multidimensional universe. Such comprehensive education produced individuals with capabilities that would seem miraculous by today's standards. People who could heal through spiritual means, communicate across vast distances without physical instruments, and perceive truths hidden from ordinary observation. The legal systems of ancient societies had to account for crimes and disputes involving both humans and jinn. Special courts were established with judges trained in the laws governing both species, and legal procedures were developed for cases where members of different realms came into conflict. Witness testimony had to be evaluated differently when it came from jinn, whose perception of time and space differed from that of humans, and whose motivations and cultural norms were not always aligned with human understanding. Punishments had to be designed to be effective for beings with different natures and vulnerabilities, taking into account the fact that what might deter a human might not affect a jinn and vice versa. These legal systems represented some of the most sophisticated approaches to justice ever developed, requiring judges and lawyers to understand not just human nature and behavior, but the psychology and spiritual dynamics of multiple species and dimensions. Trade and commerce in the age of visible jinn operated on principles that we can barely comprehend today. Value was determined not just by material scarcity and utility, but by spiritual properties and dimensional significance. A simple stone might be worth more than gold if it possessed protective qualities, or if it had been blessed in a particular way. Contracts had to account for the different relationship to time that jinn possessed, their ability to travel instantly across great distances, and their access to knowledge from the unseen realm. The currency systems of those times included not just physical coins and goods, but also spiritual assets such as blessings, protection, knowledge, and access to hidden treasures that existed in parallel dimensions. The medical practices of ancient times incorporated healing techniques that worked on both the physical and spiritual levels. Physicians understood that many illnesses originated from disturbances in the spiritual realm and could only be cured by addressing their root causes in the unseen world. Jinn healers possessed knowledge of remedies and treatments that operated purely on the spiritual level, while human doctors focused on the physical manifestations of disease and injury. The most effective healing occurred when practitioners from both realms worked together, combining their different but complementary areas of expertise to address illness from all possible angles. Patients might receive treatment that included physical medicines, spiritual cleansing, protective prayers, and energy work that operated across multiple dimensions simultaneously. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this ancient era was the nature of warfare when it involved both human and jinn forces. Battles were fought on multiple levels simultaneously, with physical combat taking place alongside spiritual warfare in the unseen realm. Victory often depended not just on military strategy and physical prowess, but on spiritual strength, purity of intention, and the favor of Allah. Armies would include both human soldiers and Jinn allies, each contributing their unique capabilities to the war effort. Jinn forces could scout enemy positions instantly, disrupt enemy communications through spiritual interference, and attack on levels that purely human armies could not even perceive. The intelligence-gathering capabilities available to ancient military commanders included access to information from across multiple dimensions and realms. Jinn scouts could observe enemy movements from the spiritual realm, where physical obstacles like mountains, walls, and distance posed no barriers. They could listen to private conversations, observe secret meetings, and gather intelligence that would be impossible for human spies to obtain. However, enemy forces with their own Jinn allies could deploy spiritual countermeasures, creating wards and protections that blocked such reconnaissance, leading to arms races in spiritual technology and defensive techniques. The complexity of these multidimensional conflicts required military leaders who understood warfare on levels that modern generals cannot even conceive of. The gradual separation of the human and Jinn worlds was marked by specific historical events and transitions that changed the nature of existence for both species. One of the most significant of these occurred when the knowledge of true names and spiritual essences began to be hidden from human perception. In the early ages, humans could perceive the spiritual names and natures of Jinn, allowing them to understand their true intentions and capabilities. This knowledge prevented deception and manipulation, as it was impossible for evil Jinn to disguise their nature from human perception. When this ability was lost, humans became more vulnerable to spiritual deception. But they also gained protection from the overwhelming spiritual information that could drive them to madness or despair. Another crucial transition occurred when the pathways between dimensions became increasingly restricted. In the earliest times, movement between the physical and spiritual realms was relatively easy for those who knew the proper techniques and possessed the necessary spiritual purity. Humans could visit spiritual realms and return with knowledge and experiences that enriched their understanding of existence. Jinn could manifest fully in the physical world, taking on solid forms and interacting with material objects as easily as humans do. As these pathways became more restricted, both species found themselves increasingly confined to their native dimensions, able to influence each other, but no longer able to truly cross over and experience life in the other realm. The role of prophets and messengers during the transition period was significant, as they served as bridges between the separating worlds. These holy individuals retained the ability to perceive and interact with the Jinn, even as this capacity was being withdrawn from ordinary humans. They could still receive revelations that came through spiritual channels, communicate with angels and righteous Jinn, and access knowledge from the unseen realm. Their missions often involved teaching humans how to navigate the new reality of a more separated existence, how to maintain spiritual awareness without being overwhelmed by it, and how to continue benefiting from the guidance of the unseen world, even when they could no longer see it directly. The final prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, represented the culmination of this process, serving as the last direct link between humanity and the full revelation of divine knowledge. The wisdom behind Allah's decision to gradually separate these worlds becomes clearer when we understand the spiritual development of humanity as a whole. In the early ages, when humans possessed greater spiritual purity and closer connection to their original nature, they could handle direct interaction with the Jinn without being corrupted or misled. But as human society became more complex and human hearts became more polluted with sin, this direct interaction became spiritually dangerous. The majority of humans began to lose the discernment necessary to distinguish between righteous and evil Jinn, making them susceptible to manipulation and spiritual corruption. By veiling the Jinn from human sight, Allah protected humanity from falling into widespread shirk and spiritual confusion, while still allowing for limited interaction when necessary for specific divine purposes. The modern world bears the traces of this ancient interaction in ways that most people do not recognize. Many of the legends, myths, and folklore traditions from around the world contain distorted memories of the time when humans and jinn coexisted visibly. Stories of giants, demons, spirits, and magical beings found in every culture often represent corrupted accounts of actual historical interactions between humans and various types of jinn. The knowledge systems preserved in certain esoteric traditions, while often mixed with falsehood and innovation, sometimes contain fragments of the authentic wisdom that was once shared between the two species. Archaeological sites around the world contain structures and artifacts that can only be fully understood when we recognize that they were created during a time when beings with capabilities beyond normal human ability were actively involved in their construction. The implications of this hidden history for contemporary Muslims are profound and important to understand. While we no longer live in an age of visible jinn interaction, we still exist in a universe where the unseen realm is very real and very active. The jinn continue to exist, continue to influence human affairs, and continue to be either allies or enemies in our spiritual journey, even though we cannot see them directly. Understanding this history helps us appreciate the reality of the unseen world, the importance of spiritual protection, and the wisdom of the Islamic practices that shield us from negative spiritual influences. The Quran and Sunnah provide us with all the guidance we need to navigate our relationship with the unseen realm safely and beneficially, even without the direct sight that our predecessors possessed. The authentic Islamic sources provide us with detailed guidance on how to interact properly with the unseen realm in our current age. The daily prayers, recitation of Quranic verses, and remembrance of Allah create spiritual environments that attract righteous spiritual entities while repelling harmful ones. The seeking of refuge with Allah through specific supplications provides protection against the malevolent among the jinn who might seek to harm or mislead us. The maintenance of ritual purity, both physical and spiritual, creates barriers that evil entities cannot cross while opening channels for beneficial spiritual influence. These practices represent the distilled wisdom of thousands of years of human-jinn interaction, refined and perfected by divine revelation to provide optimal spiritual protection and benefit. The stories preserved in Islamic tradition about the righteous among the jinn serve as important reminders that not all unseen beings are enemies of humans. The Quran tells us about jinn who became Muslim after hearing the Prophet, peace be upon him, recite the divine revelation, and who went back to their people as warners and teachers. These believing jinn continue to exist and continue to serve Allah alongside believing humans. Even though their service now takes place primarily in the unseen realm, their presence reminds us that the spiritual battle between good and evil involves participants from multiple realms and dimensions, and that our own choices and actions in this world have significance that extends far beyond what we can see with our physical eyes. The righteousness or corruption of our deeds influences not just our own spiritual development, but the entire cosmic balance between light and darkness across all dimensions of existence. For the contemporary believer, understanding this hidden history provides several important benefits and insights. It helps us develop a more complete and accurate understanding of the nature of reality, recognizing that the material world we see is only one layer of a much more complex and multifaceted universe. This understanding can deepen our appreciation for the wisdom and comprehensiveness of Islamic guidance, which provides direction not just for our visible interactions with other humans, but for our spiritual interactions with the entire unseen realm. It can increase our consciousness of the spiritual significance of our actions, knowing that we are observed and influenced by beings whose existence extends beyond the physical realm. And it can strengthen our reliance on Allah and our commitment to following the authentic Islamic practices that provide protection and guidance in navigating the complex spiritual realities that surround us. The time when humans and jinn could see each other face to face may have ended, but the significance of that era continues to resonate through every aspect of our spiritual lives. It reminds us that we live in a universe teeming with conscious beings, that our choices and actions have consequences that extend across multiple dimensions, and that the guidance provided by Allah through His prophets and revelations is comprehensive enough to direct us safely through all the spiritual challenges we might encounter. Whether we can see them or not, the Jinn remain our neighbors in this universe, and our success in both this world and the hereafter depends partly on how wisely we navigate our relationship with the unseen realm they inhabit. The separation of the worlds was not an ending, but a transformation, a change in the conditions under which the spiritual journey takes place. In some ways, this change represents a more demanding test for humanity, requiring us to maintain faith and spiritual awareness without the clear visual confirmation that our predecessors enjoyed. But it also represents a form of protection and mercy, shielding us from spiritual influences that we might not have the wisdom or strength to handle appropriately. The path to spiritual success remains the same as it always has been: submission to Allah, following the guidance of His prophets, and striving to purify our hearts and souls in preparation for our eventual return to Him. The fact that we now walk this path without seeing the full spiritual context in which it takes place does not make the path any less real or any less important. It simply requires us to walk with greater faith and trust in the divine guidance that lights our way. As we reach the end of our journey through this hidden history, we are left with a profound appreciation for the wisdom and mercy of Allah in how He has structured the relationship between the seen and unseen worlds throughout human history. The age of visible Jinn interaction was a unique period that served important purposes in the spiritual education of humanity. But its ending marked not a loss, but an evolution toward a more mature and sophisticated form of spiritual relationship. Today, our interaction with the unseen realm takes place through the elevated channels of prayer, supplication, Quranic recitation, and dhikr, methods that purify and strengthen our souls while protecting us from spiritual harm. The righteous among the Jinn continue to serve as our allies in the cosmic struggle between good and evil, while the evil among them continue to serve as tests and challenges that strengthen our faith and reliance on Allah when we meet them with proper spiritual preparation. May Allah grant us the wisdom to understand these profound realities and the strength to navigate them successfully on our journey back to Him.